Hey guys, what's going on? It's Salvage here, and today we're going to be talking about the Batman, and apparently the Batman plagiarized some guy from the 1990s called Chris Wozniak, and he was like a freelance writer slash artist at DC Comics. Now, before we get into the video, if you could drop a like, let's try to get at least 300 likes. You guys have been killing it, and I've been trying to post as much as possible. I post every day. You know, I love this, and I love editing as much as possible for you guys. And it's a lot of fun, so go ahead and drop it. I'd really appreciate it, and let's get into it. So, like I said, apparently this guy named Chris Wozniak is coming out and saying that he basically got ripped off, apparently, by the executive producer and essentially DC. And he said that they're taking his Riddler idea, his concept for the Riddler that he's had for the last like 27 years, and apparently they ripped him off on it inside of the Batman. Now, he's coming out with these claims pretty recently. I mean, the last like 5 days he's come out, and he said that he's going to be posting more about this. And there's a lot of things that really go into it, but let's just go ahead and start off with the first few comparisons. Or actually, let's start here real quick. In 2008, apparently Chris Wozniak emailed this plot directly to executive producer Michael Usan, who is actually the man who is the executive producer behind the Batman, and we'll get into him in a quote that he actually says later on. So let's go ahead and show some reasonings. He has a lot of similarities, a lot of comparisons. I'm going to try to break them down as fast as possible. So he says at the beginning, the premise is that, Gotham's essentially in complete chaos. There's many different governments and police forces that are overtaken by the criminal banking coalition, or whatever the fuck that he says, and it's causing complete systematic corruption. And he's saying that everything that happens in the Batman is essentially a downscaled version of what happens in his book. He's saying that the Riddler's scale, or the Riddler's premise and scheme, is all worldwide in his, but it's basically just kind of downscaled for Gotham's corruption in Gotham's world in a much more realistic way. All of the cops are essentially taking a bribe. They say are on a take. I'm assuming that means like a bribe. So, they're actually really on the renewal fund in the Batman. For another thing, he says that there's protests against the corruption, riots, and looting are everywhere. Martial law is implied or implemented, which is at the end of the Batman. He also says the city is broken. A lot of basic things, like Jim is the last honest cop. Like, a lot of these can be just attributed to, of course, just Batman in general. Like, this can all be year one stuff. And I'm not trying to say that, they didn't take from this guy. And I'm also not trying to say that they did. I'm just trying to throw this out here and trying to give out his side of the story, but also kind of give a fair argument that he doesn't own the rights to any of this. Sure, Jim might have been the last honest cop in your story, and he might have been sort of like that in this movie, which actually he isn't. But if, let's just say for the sake of the argument that he is, well, he's like that in year one too. So are you plagiarizing year one? Is that the case? And he says, all the scenes of grisly homicide, the Batman finds a taunting note from the Riddler promising more murders to come. It's the Riddler. What do you expect him to do? Not taunt Batman? That's the Riddler. That's all of his villains. That's a lot of his villains that taunt Batman. And he's also saying that the Riddler's reimagining is actually just like what he said. He's reimagined as a lonely, morbid, gruesome serial killer and mass murderer. And while that can be attributed to, I guess you can say, maybe they found a script and apparently, that's essentially what happened and they try to reuse it, I guess. But in many ways, they did their own thing with the serial killer thing. They made him more like the Zodiac Killer. He's not saying that he did that, He's not necessarily saying that they try to make him into a Zodiac Killer. He just said that he made him into a serial killer / mass murderer, which is incredibly vague, because all of Batman's villains are serial killers and mass murderers. That's why they're villains. He says that the Batman and Jim Gordon must team up and use their combined detective skills to solve something horrific investigative thriller. That's like the Long Halloween, isn't it? I mean, technically speaking, that's like the Long Halloween. You don't own that as well. Now, this one's actually kind of very, very similar, and I'll give him this one. While at home, Barbara Gordon, who turns out to be Alfred in the Batman movie, receives a riddle that is booby-trapped as a firebomb. The Batman finds out via a phone call that it's too late to save Barbara Gordon, which in the movie, of course, turns out to be Alfred. And, of course, Barbara Gordon's hospitalized for the rest of the movie. That's a very close similarity. You know, there's very close similarities there. Another one that I'll also give him is during a massive citywide manhunt, the Riddler simply turns himself in as at the police station. But in the movie, it's the diner. And, of course, there's multiple hints about what's to come, about, like, his big reveal. And, of course, that also kind of happens in the movie as well. When you keep going, the Riddler has like a pretty similar backstory. You know, he's like socially isolated, and apparently he lived in a pretty similar environment to the orphanage, but not like the exact like thing as the orphanage. Is not like a 1-for-1. I think he tries to compare it a little too hard, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. And also saying that apparently the Riddler's been waiting his entire life for this moment of clarity, and having this moment where he actually can't evoke justice or vengeance and unmask the truth or whatever. He's saying that in his version he will solve the greatest riddle, but in the movie he's unmasking the truth. Now, it just goes on and on about different things, and I think one of the bigger ones is that the Riddler actually knows that Bruce is Batman in his story. But in the Batman, that's not the case. I think it's pretty evident that we all know that the Riddler does not know that the Batman is Bruce Wayne. I mean, it's pretty clear because he says, oh, Bruce Wayne's the only one that me and you didn't get, and he thinks that Batman and him are teaming up, which is, that's a good twist. I like that twist a lot better than Riddler knowing that Batman is Batman. And, he tries to say that everything will collapse if everybody knows who Bruce Wayne is. And that's a big part of his story, is that Riddler knows who Bruce Wayne is. And that identity will make Gotham collapse if that gets revealed. So Jim Gordon basically goes on this, like he almost kills him like Seven style. He goes up to the Riddler and points a gun to his head and is like, you can't reveal the identity of Batman or blah, blah, blah. And then he released Riddler from jail or something. Some crazy shit like that happened in this guy's story. But of course, in the movie, that's not what happens. He clearly does not know who Batman is. And of course, the Riddler has his last little master plan. His ultimate motive is set in motion, and it is about Armageddon and his story. But in the Batman, it's actually Judgment Day, which is, if that's true, it's a coincidental. Of course, it's very crazy. The method of retribution that the Riddler chooses in his story is a plague, but in the movie, it's actually a flood, which is, it's kind of different. And apparently during the final battle, Batman is incapacitated and is slowly being poisoned, but he was actually shot in the movie. And he uses the antidote. I think that's a reach, in my opinion, but it's whatever. Batman injects himself with some type of adrenaline/steroid, and he's trying to make the comparison that Batman being sick in his version and Batman using a steroid in Matt Reeves' version are somehow connected. I don't know. Batman is, of course, realizing that he needs to be a symbol of hope. Again, that's something that the comics they've shown multiple times. And again, he says the Joker, who is not seen or mentioned throughout the entire movie or entire story, appears only at the end as an unnamed mysterious man who actually is apparently the mastermind behind the Riddler's entire scheme and has been anonymously befriending and radicalizing him online. That's a twist that's not in the movie. that didn't happen in the movie. And as a matter of fact, Joker showing up at the end of stories happens fucking everywhere. Everywhere. The fucking year one, Batman Begins. The Batman Begins plagiarized this man? I don't know. He has a bunch of course, the exact same premise type of thing. He has Gotham City Police are under corruption, stuff like that. You'll read them all right next to my head or whatever. And essentially, he's trying to make comparisons to the movie that he had in his script. And the big thing is that actually Michael came out and said that they go out and, of course, they find scripts or they have scripts that they use for inspiration as blueprints for certain, movies and whatnot.
I take somebody's idea, somebody's comic book, somebody's book or play or screenplay, and I use it as a blueprint. And then we build on that. We get the best people in the industry. If you're building a house, you want to get the best mason, the best carpenter, the best electrician and plumber. We get the best director, the best writers, the best actors, and the best crew, and we put together a skyscraper.
And they did that for the Batman. And what's this man's thing used? We don't know. We probably won't ever know. In my opinion, I don't think it was as used as much as he really thinks it is. Matt Reeves said that this was like his original story that he wanted to tell him anyways. About a younger Batman dealing with this type of stuff. There are many similarities, and I would love for this to keep going forward. But one thing I think is hilarious is that he has like an Indiegogo and a fucking Patreon trying to get like fair credit and compensation somehow. Like, what are you doing? Are you gonna like try to sue DC or something because you had a fan fiction Batman story that you sent in for over 20 years that never got accepted, that just happens to be pretty similar to the movie that just came out? There's a lot that's there. There's a lot to unpack. It's a sticky situation if it's true. But if it's not, you kind of look goofy. And apparently, there's going to be an update to the story. He actually has a message at the end saying that he has another video in the works saying he has undeniable proof that the Batman for sure stole from his idea. So I'm incredibly excited to see that. I can't wait for this story to unfold if it ever gets big. And I personally want to know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you guys think that the Batman stole from this guy's ideas? Do you guys think that the Batman plagiarized from this guy? I personally don't think so. I think that many of these similarities can be found in a lot of Batman comics that predate this man. And, I think he's kind of grasping at straws and probably trying to grab some type of relevancy. But we'll see what happens along the way. I'm genuinely curious to see. So, tell me what you guys think in the comments below. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe for more videos in the future. And I'll see you guys in my next one. Peace out.